Is about breaking down, the traditional barriers that have long kept high quality satellite imagery in the hands of only the largest organizations.
A single catastrophic wildfire is enough to level, massive areas, damage in the billions. So being able to proactively try to, mitigate some of that is core to our values as a company.
It makes sense for us to focus more on the kind of a core generic, more boring problems that everybody industry would be facing, and really like helping then the solution companies to focus on their specific areas of expertise.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Problem Solved, a Geoawesome podcast. I'm Muthu, and I'm joined by my co-host Aleks.
Hi.
In every episode, we want to highlight real-world problems and explore how geospatial technology is solving them, thereby ending with the problem solved. So if you're curious about the real-world impact of geospatial data and tools, you've come to the right place. Today, we have a very special episode, and we are focusing on one of the most critical issues of our time, the resilience of our power grids. Without energy infrastructure, the world isn't going to work. So before we dive into our guests and talk about how this problem is being solved, Aleks, why don't you tell us more about the challenge?
Our industry, we often talk about reliability as the grid's ability to handle day-to-day operations. But with changing climate, increasingly severe weather events, this resilience has become one of the most important metrics to measure the performance of the grid. Right? And the resilient grid is the one that can respond to and recover quickly from those major disruptions, such as hurricanes, wildfires, or any other extreme events that unfortunately we are experiencing more and more, it feels like, every month. And this is a huge challenge for utilities, especially when it comes to vegetation management, right? So that there is a traditional approach, manual ground inspections, combined with fixed streaming cycles, right? But we all agree that it's not longer enough. And I think that utilities also start to really realize that. So this is why I'm really excited about this conversation today. And we are joined by the team of experts from 3 different companies working together to solve this problem. So we would like to welcome today Andrew Creamer, data acquisition lead from Overstory, Janey Bessler, manager from sales engineering team at Maxar, and Jussi Koski, chief product officer at Up42. Welcome to you all. Super happy and super excited to discuss with you today. Andrew, let's start from you. Your role at Overstory is to turn data into a solution for the client. Can you explain the core business of Overstory and how you transform those raw data into actionable insights for power and utilities?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us today. Happy to talk about it. Excited. Yeah. So Overstory at its core is we're an AI-based grid resilience platform for utilities. As you said, the grid is under immense stress and pressure from wildfires, storms, increased demand, as well as like aging equipment. Just things get older. So what Overstory does, we provide a bird's eye view of a customer's network that allows them to ID vegetation threats and then take action on those threats. We have roughly 70 customers across the northern and southern hemisphere. Some of the big ones are PG&E, OG&E, ATC, American Transmission Company, and the Southern Company, as well as many other co-ops and municipals, so smaller ones. But yeah, we take the complex raw Earth observation data from satellites and other sources, and we turn it into clear, actionable vegetation intelligence for these utilities. Some of this is combining utility poles and line locations. We use the satellite and aerial imagery, digital terrain models, wildfire risk models, and pretty much anything that we can get our hands on, any high quality data that we can get our hands on, we'll use it. And we use it to analyze tree fall in and grow in, wildfire ignition and spread, and then just kind of large scale tree health analysis across their networks. And then we turn that into very specific, we use risk score analyses, and then we can prioritize specific locations for our customers. So then it helps them really target areas and take action before they become a problem. So it's much more of a proactive than reactive industry now.
So it feels like that in your line of business, the data, especially Earth observation data, is kind of a really critical element, right? So I wanted to ask you about the primary challenges that you faced in acquiring satellite data, right? And perhaps about how you are utilizing some of the solutions of companies being represented here today as well, like Up42 and Maxar, to actually enhance this process.
Yeah, absolutely. There are numerous challenges. I think the satellite and aerial industries, it's amazing what we can do. Sometimes very complex, very difficult to work with. So we need to spend our time, Overstory, we need to spend our time kind of on the analysis, on providing the final results. And so anything we can do to streamline, the actual acquisition of data, it really does help. And so some of the biggest challenges we're faced with right now are scaling. So we have 70 customers across the US, and acquiring data, fresh 30 high resolution data is a huge challenge because there are only so many satellites in the air and planes in the air, and so a lot of these networks are sprawling, so lots and lots of data. And then the timeline of getting that data, and so the scale, the timeline, really everything is kind of a challenge. So that's kind of the actual acquisition, and then the actual ingesting that data is the next big challenge, and kind of streamlining that and making sure that we are receiving it on a quick timeline, from capture to providing analysis. We want it to be less than 4 weeks. So and then combining all of these different data sources. So we use 4 to 5 different data sources, Maxar being one of the big players for us. And combining and strategizing and picking who's going to capture what where is a big part of what I do. And so I love Up42 because they streamline basically every aspect of that. It's from ordering and tasking and submitting archive orders to the actual formatting of the data. They have customizable tags and that you can attach to every asset that comes in, which allows it to be much more organized once it's in our internal systems. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to function without Up42. They're a huge boon. They're very, very helpful.
We're talking today about vegetation management predominantly from the perspective of utilities, but it's also a problem for the railways. I worked with the railways for the last 5.5 years, and I can tell you that's a significant issue. And I'm also glad that we have the entire value chain and in a collaborative way here today. We're not just talking to Overstory, we're also talking to Maxar, and we're also talking to Up42. And I think these are the kind of collaborations that enterprise customers who use Earth observation want to see. They just want to have the insights, and they want to have a flawless ecosystem and not have to worry about how the platform is set up. So it's really great, and it's a special episode in that sense that we have 3 different companies talking about one specific problem. Really, really happy to have that. Jussi, from Up42's perspective, how does your platform specifically solve these data acquisition challenges that Andrew mentioned for companies that work in this very important sector where resilience is so important? How do you grant access to the data for them to build their AI-powered solutions? AI being the key word and the buzzword here anyway today.
Thanks. And I was happy to hear Andrew's perspective and on behalf of the team. But if I'm looking at it from the Up42 perspective, there are perhaps like three aspects where I believe that we are basically bringing value in this acquisition. And first one of them is really bringing like options and variety on the data. So first of all, like bringing alternatives. Andrew mentioned that the sheer volume and capacity is a challenge on the market. And I think by being able to provide different alternatives, several different data sources that can be brought into the projects, that provides resiliency on that level. If data is not available from one provider, it is possible to find an alternative source. And then also in terms of broader spectrum of data, Andrew mentioned that they are using several types of data. So often we see that the customers are starting, for instance, with satellite imagery, using stereoscopic satellite imagery, but then starting to look at alternatives, perhaps data captured with fixed wing aerial planes, or some already ready-made DSM, digital surface models. So we want to provide variety of different types of data, also new types of satellite data, like for instance hyperspectral data, to complement the analysis. So I think that's one way how we're bringing value. I think the second one is trying to make this data from different sources easy to consume. So both in terms of harmonizing the data so that it's as much as possible available in one single consistent format. And then also, not only technically, but also having a customer success team which is providing a counterpart in actually planning the projects and looking for data alternatives. I think that's the other aspect. And I think the third aspect is probably related to automation and doing it in scale. Like we aim to provide really powerful APIs and SDKs so that there's basically the companies like Overstory can create one single integration with our platform to automate things end to end. And they are not the simplest and an easiest customer to work with, because they, for instance, just to take an example, their AOIs are not, the areas of interest are not super simple squares. They are actually very complex, areas of interest following the topography of the power grids. So basically, they end up making a lot of very small orders, and making that possible, and making that possible in scale, so that they can place basically thousands of small orders, and then we can deliver it in time. I think that's one aspect that we're trying to solve.
It's interesting to hear that you mentioned three aspects. So the first one was pretty simple. Up42 makes different data sets available, making it easier for them when one satellite data is not available. Second one, you've got a dedicated customer team, and you know how this particular industry works. You can help Overstory. And the third one, which is the topography challenges and the whole challenge with making it easier for them to integrate with your software SDK, so that they don't have to work with 5 different software SDKs. But somehow the core of it was data, which is the most fundamental aspect of it, and which is brings me to the next point. So looking at you, Janey, Maxar is the data provider here. You provide the foundational data on top of which Up42's stack is built and distribution is built, and on top of which then Andrew basically with his team as Overstory is then building the insights and the analysis. And we, Jussi touched upon the importance of the topographic challenges. A power line isn't usually a rectangle, it's also curved, so it brings with its own challenges. And Andrew mentioned at the very beginning, he's looking at very high resolution data, looking at 30 centimeter data. So how does this whole setup work for Maxar? Could you explain the importance of your high resolution imagery and how that level of detail helps enhance the performance of the AI models for applications, including vegetation management?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and so happy to be here talking with these great folks today. Satellite imagery offers a very distinct advantage for enhancing grid resilience. With thousands of kilometers of transmission lines, utility companies need a reliable as well as scalable solution to keep up with risks due to vegetation, right? So that's where Maxar's collection capability of 6 million square kilometers of capacity per day comes into play. Maxar's very high resolution imagery means the difference between, broad analysis where you can see that there are trees near your power lines, but you can't determine which ones actually really pose an issue, and precise analysis of each tree, right? So allowing utility companies to mitigate specific vegetation issues instead of spending time monitoring the whole transmission line for risks. So this level of detail from very high resolution imagery, again, that native 30 centimeter resolution, plus our near infrared bands, to unlock the full potential of multispectral data, allows, really precise vegetation analysis. And all of that is critical for vegetation management because it enables AI models to move beyond just broad classifications to really actionable insights, right? Maxar also offers another completely unique opportunity thanks to the size of our archive image library. So we have over 125 petabytes of historical data collected globally that can be used to train AI models and therefore improve output performance, right? So with this combo of very high resolution imagery and AI, utility companies can take action with surgical precision and detect threats early before problems arise.
I think sometimes around with the numbers, we kind of lose the magnitude of what it really means. 175 terabytes sounds like a number, but that's a huge data set. And probably the kind of data which even large language models don't necessarily ingest, but yeah.
Indeed, yes, yeah. The high collection capacity now with Worldview Legion has become online, right? 6 additional 30 centimeter native sensors, right? Collecting just so much data every day that really can add to that, again, output performance for those AI models, as well as move beyond just broad classifications and actionable insights.
Easy questions are over. Now, more tricky one. So Maxar, you've got your own clients and sales channels, and you've mentioned the huge archives and the value that you brings, right? So why partnering with Up42? So what benefits does it bring for you guys?
And ignore Jussi. Don't look at him.
No, this is a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. Joining a platform ecosystem like Up42 is about breaking down, the traditional barriers that have long kept high quality satellite imagery in the hands of only the largest organizations, right? Up42 changes that equation by making our data accessible to a broader global audience, which is just benefits everyone. But we're not just expanding our customer base here. We're enabling an entire ecosystem of solutions built by diverse customers who now will have the data and the tools to turn high resolution satellite imagery into innovative applications across many industries. So we're really excited for the partnership, and we look forward to continuing that in the future.
I'm sure, Jussi, you want to add on top of the partnership and what's the business rationale for Up42? I mean, you are a platform player. So how important is it for you to have Maxar there?
Like for us as a platform and marketplace, like building a comprehensive partner ecosystem is the key strategic objective, and we are successful when our partners are successful. So it's kind of a like obvious thing to say, but it's really an important guideline for us, and that's what we try to reflect in everything we do. But specifically, like adding Maxar is a big step for us, because obviously Maxar is a leading provider in many aspects, and then Janey was already talking about it. Like, first of all, the data quality, like it is just top-notch data quality, and then we hear it again and again from like our customers. And Andrew here is one example of like demanding customers who really know and then dig into the details of the data. And I think serving like demanding customers then like the data quality is something that just needs to be in place. And then with Maxar, that's definitely a strength. And the second thing you mentioned, also capacity, both in terms of capacity for tasking with the large constellation and then the new satellites, but then also the vast archive. So that is obviously bringing value. Also the breadth of different data products. So we've been focusing on, in this discussion, mostly on the optical data products, but Maxar is also providing 3D elevation products, digital surface models, terrain models. So there's breadth of data, and then you also mentioned the shortwave infrared as an example. So also in that sense, it really complements the portfolio. And one thing I'd like to mention is just the fact that Maxar is an established player. It's not only a brand thing, like obviously the brand is having value, but also like there are a lot of companies who over the years have actually learned to use Maxar data and then learned to trust it. So it is important and really valuable to have it available.
Yeah, I can imagine. Also, given the roots of UP42, I think it's a testament to the fact that you have continued to go down this path and to add more and more data providers and not to stick with the ones that you started off with. I think that's also a very important decision from the leadership team to keep growing the company, to keep growing as a platform. Andrew, I'm getting back to you, and as a former person who was on the other side of the geospatial sector using those products, one of the most difficult things, now talking from the perspective of an end customer, was what am I going to get in return for using Earth observation insights? I know what I need to invest in terms of the manpower or human resources in order to tackle this problem. I already have my processes set up, and usually they require me to have this multi-year trim processes. Mm-hmm. So you're not only working with challenging the culture in most enterprise organizations, but also you're working with challenging the business side of things. So do you want to share some examples in terms of tangible benefits or return on investment that utilities have seen by using a platform like Overstory, whether that's cost savings, whether that's improved reliability and resilience? What's your pitch to the customers in the end?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the pitch is, in short, a shift from reactive to proactive. So many of our customers are on a cycle based, where they go to a place once every 5 years and they trim it. And in the interim, if something happens, it's reactive. So yeah, I mean, not only does it yield massive improvements for operational efficiency, but it's also just a safety thing. I mean, when you're proactively, when you know where to go, it's better for everyone. So yeah, a few of the examples. We have a Canadian utility. They reduced their tree-related outages by 48%. By shifting from a cycle-based to a trim, like trimming, going on demand. Yeah, I mean, it's like the numbers. Yeah, it's wild to me to see this kind of effect. And another one kind of unexpected result was, they also, our customers also care about clear spans where there aren't any trees. Like if we can tell them where they don't have to go, then they save resources, and the time and money. So one of our major IOUs, they have 13%. We were able to tell them 13% of your spans are completely clear, like 100% certainty. There's nothing there. Don't go there. And so yeah, I mean, it was a huge win for them. And then I mean, overall, it's we talk about it at Overstory quite often, how severe what we're dealing with is. There are massive wildfires across the world now, and a single catastrophic wildfire is enough to level massive areas, damage in the billions. So being able to proactively try to mitigate some of that is kind of core to our values as a company.
One thing that is very inspiring for me, that I think we are missing a lot in the sector, is collaboration, right? So I think that it's really great to see three organizations like this kind of partnering actually bring significant value to end users and clients of the solution, right? And with that, actually, to all of us, because we would have more resilient grid, hopefully, as a result. So Jussi, I wanted to ask you, what does collaborative model actually tells us about the future of the industry? Right? So how do you see this evolving?
All right, that's a big question, but a great one. But yeah, I think there has been quite a lot of talk and buzz in the industry about verticalization and companies going and verticalizing and building like vertical solutions and integrating. And I think often it's kind of a quicker way to make breakthroughs on some really defined domain. But actually, when we take a step back and think about how do we then really scale up, because that's really the objective. How can we scale up? It makes sense to start really building this kind of an ecosystem where different stakeholders focus on certain areas of strength. And like to build a world-class, like AI-enabled geospatial solution, like for instance for grid resilience, it requires a lot of focus and a specialization and going really deep into the specifics of the industry and the specifics of the customer demand. So it really requires full attention, and we want companies like Overstory to focus on the innovation and really focus on building those solutions. And then players like us who are more on the kind of an enabling level, on the platform level, it makes sense for us to focus more on the kind of an core, generic, more boring problems that everybody industry would be facing, and really like helping then the solution companies to focus on their specific areas of expertise and the innovation on top, and us to stay more on the enabling level. And then thinking of the data providers, obviously, like as was already alluded, like satellite imagery and data providers have focused a lot on the defense and intelligence and government use cases, the big customers there, and then their own vertical offerings and direct approach. It makes sense to focus on those domains. And then I think partnering then on these commercial use cases, it just makes sense for everybody to kind of like build the ecosystem of partnerships. And I believe that we can really replicate the success of this vegetation management and power grid management on so many areas, and so many domains. And the use case that Andrew is talking about, it's kind of unique in terms of scale, because the value is so high, risk of not doing anything is just extremely high, with the risk of wildfires and massive outages. Also, the opportunity cost is so high, like cost of sending someone with a traditional method to survey, like on site, is very high. And then also it's a kind of a large-scale global use case, and it's also continuous. It's not a project-based use case. The trees, they do grow every year, so that's really the strength of that use case. So I think those are some of the aspects which have made it a really success. But I think we can replicate it, and we should look at those characteristics on some other use cases, and I'm sure we can duplicate the success.
I mentioned at the very beginning that this was a special episode because we have three really interesting people from three amazing companies. There is also another reason why I think it's a special episode, because usually when we have an episode, we've got one defined problem. And in this particular case, we started off talking about resilient grids and about vegetation management. And I think we didn't realize that we're also solving another problem, whether it's going to be an horizontal industry or a vertical industry, as geospatial and Earth observation. That's still an argument that's going on. and we certainly have each of us our own thoughts. But what we don't realize is collaborations like this, integrations like this, is helping us ensure that we're not challenged by big players with their big geospatial foundation models, whether they necessarily have the know-how or not, but they certainly have the financial and the capital resources to go after markets like the grid market. And I know that there are geospatial foundational model providers who are looking at this, but the fact that 3 different companies, Maxar, Up42, and Overstory, are working together to ensure that they each work on their puzzle, make sure that we're, as an industry, we tend to retain our core intelligence and not that somebody else with IT skills takes it over. So I think that's really great, and I'm really happy for it. Janey, in closing, what's the single most important message you want to leave the audience with about the power of observation to future-proof critical infrastructure?
Yeah, this is a loaded question. There's so much to say here, right? But I think, the single most important message is that Earth observation, and specifically, a constellation of 10 high-resolution imagery satellites, such as Maxar's, can allow utility companies to go from, we've said this before, reactive to proactive infrastructure monitoring, right? And being able to do that, is the key to so much energy, time, and money savings, right? Providing the detailed data needed and analysis, all while doing it all at scale is the key to achieving success there, right? So, I think the most important thing is that we continue to leverage this type of data, as well as enable access to a broader global audience to be able to support these key efforts, and really look to future-proof that infrastructure and that grid resilience.
I love what you said, and I also love the use case, the vegetation management and asset management use case, because it actually proves that there is a huge value out of Earth observation data, not only for the governments and defense, disaster recovery, and so on, but also for those commercial use cases, right? And I hope that we will soon have many more episodes where actually we'll be discussing with different companies those well adopted Earth observation use cases. So I really look to it. And thanks so much for all of you for joining the conversation today, and also huge thanks to our listeners. Don't forget to follow Geoawesome for more insights. And of course, see you next time on Problem Solved episodes. Thanks, everyone.